Tell me, do you read Sutter Kane? Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 1994 John Carpenter classic, In the Mouth of Madness. This is a movie that I had seen only once before when I was a teenager, and I did not care for it back then. But as the years have progressed, as I have opened myself up to more of the horror world, more of the horror literary world, and definitely more of H.P. Lovecraft, I rewatched this not too long ago, and I have an absolute newfound appreciation and love for this film. This was a great movie on all counts. My teenage self just didn't know what he was doing. This is a movie that explores a lot more of different aspects of horror than most other horror films, certainly more than slashers and such. This operates on much more of a cerebral level, I think what you would call cosmic horror or elder horror. So a 5-mile overview of the plot of this one is Sam Neill plays John Trent, an insurance investigator who is recently hired by a book publisher to find their missing author, Sutter Kane. Sutter Kane is a horror writer that is so popular that he is outselling even Stephen King and has pretty much single-handedly built this publishing house. But he's a recluse and he's mysterious, and the only person that ever knew who he actually was and where he lived was his agent, who upon reading the latest what has been released of Sutter Kane's latest manuscript basically went bonkers with an axe. And that's ultimately, now we're at the point where Sutter Kane is no longer responding to things. He's no longer mailing any manuscripts in. His latest work is a partially completed book called In the Mouth of Madness. And John Trent must now find him and find out what's going on and when they can receive the final document so that they can publish it. And in doing so, he basically kind of goes down the rabbit hole himself and finds a small town that Sutter Kane supposedly lives at, and there's elements of the town that have made its way into his books, or possibly his books have built the town. The nature of reality becomes very, very skewed and very, very gray as the small town gets entered and investigated, and truths start revealing themselves until ultimately, well, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it yet. The thing I loved about this movie, there was a lot of things. Obviously, becoming a Lovecraft fan, a lot of people recognize the map behind me. There's an element of his storylines that, obviously, there's so much that this movie took inspiration from the hard-boiled detective just doing a normal investigation until he finds out that he's in over his head by cosmic forces and so forth. And then also, not just the threat of harm or death or dismemberment or disemboweling, but the threat of insanity and the threat of the very fabric of reality unraveling itself. But then also raising the questions that if insanity is simply the fabric of reality unraveling itself, but in individual serving size, then if all sorts of people start to have, if the majority of the world starts to have their fabric of their reality unraveling in individual serving sizes put all together, what's the difference between that and the fabric of reality in actuality unraveling? So there was a lot about this movie that I found creative, inspiring, interesting, and well acted. I'm going to go ahead and throw up all the scores here. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. This is a must-watch, I think, especially for any horror movie lover, especially for any Lovecraft fan. I don't know why it took me so long. I've always heard that In the Mouth of Madness was inspired, by Lovecraft, and it has a very Lovecraftian feel. And even though I became a fan of Lovecraft, I still kind of held on to that teenage watch experience and telling myself that I wouldn't enjoy this movie. And I wish I hadn't listened to that voice. I wish I had watched this a bit sooner. So that's pretty much where I come down to with this, is pleading with people. If you do love horror, if you do love Lovecraft, if you do love kind of the cerebral horror, then start dusting this one off and make it a must-watch experience. As far as the individual categories, just one or two things that I wanted to address. The intent, I think, really sold this movie as far as some really great creepy moments. I mean, this can have a very Lovecraftian feel and still hold back on the scares and the unsettling creep factor, and it really didn't. It really brought those to the table as well. I mean, even just the experience of John Trent getting into the town was a very creepy sequence. So I really loved how they brought the storyline elements, the inspirational elements, but also brought the scares. That was important, and they managed to pull it off. So high marks on the intent there. As far as the acting goes, I think that Sam Neill really carried this movie. All the actors surrounding him, including, yes, even by Charlton Heston, who played the book publisher's CEO, for lack of a better word, really kind of did an okay job. But Sam Neill was the one that really carried this movie. And that's perfectly fine because we follow him 99% of the time. He is our protagonist and he is carrying us through this movie, and he does a damn fine job of it. So high marks on the acting there. But just kind of taking the average of it with all the other performances, not quite as high as the other scores. And the camera work and the editing and everything were on point. Were very, very good. The score was excellent. But if I had one complaint about it, I would say that the creature effects were good. Which doesn't sound like a complaint, except that we're talking about a John Carpenter movie here. And we're talking about a John Carpenter movie in which anything could happen in any way in terms of creature effects. This movie has the capability, considering the nature of reality is being questioned here, of having more creative license than even The Thing, and say with total honesty that the creature effects were only good is a little bit of a letdown. So high marks, but I really can't help but feel like they should have been epically high and they just weren't. So maybe that comes down to a budgeting thing. Maybe it comes down to, I don't know what visual effects studio he worked with on this one, but I just wish it had been just a little bit better. So with a total of 79 out of 100 points, again, I wouldn't just recommend this movie. I would insist that this is a must watch. And I really don't have a whole lot more to say on it. It's classic for a reason. It's a great movie for a reason. And my younger teenage self was an idiot. So that should about do it for this review of 1994's In the Mouth of Madness. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. That'll help me out a whole lot. If you want to support me further, my Patreon and my merchandise storefront links are below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.